So I'm going to stay with the music theme, and I got a good friend of mine who's quite a bit younger than me, was in the 5th grade when I was a senior 35 years ago. But Matt Rumler and I have been friends for a long time, even though he's a Celtics fan, and that really moves you down the list of people that I would want to associate with. But we are bonded in our love of basketball and our love of music. And when I started doing some of these episodes, he and I had a phone conversation. We talked about how can we get him on here. And he liked the draft idea. I liked the draft idea. So we decided to go in a different route. So we're not drafting albums from a year. We picked a band that we both really love, and we're going to draft the songs from the seminal late 70s, 80s into the 90s band Van Halen. So Matt, glad to have you on here today. This ought to be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me over. Like I said, as soon as I started listening to the podcast, I was like, I got to get in on this. The draft idea sounded fun. And just because of the age gap, I'm like, I don't know how easy it would be for me to do album years like you and Jerry have been able to do. You obviously have, ideas of, hey, I was listening to this when I was driving my car doing this. It'd be a little bit different for me. But, yeah, this one today I was pretty excited when we kind of spitballed and, hey, what can we do for Van Halen? And so with our love of basketball, it's Lakers, Celtics. We're going to do a little draft today, see how things come out.
Yeah, and I think to the point of, like, it's funny, the age gap between you and I isn't the age gap that Caleb and I have when I have Caleb on it set at 18 years old. And I think that might make it harder in your situation because there is some level of you would have known those when you were a kid, but not enough that maybe there was a memory of it. With Caleb, it's funny because he's finding everything from when I was a kid for the first time. So when he and I have a discussion, he doesn't have any real tie to it. Where a lot of these things that we're going to talk about today are songs we're going to pick, you have some sort of tie to them because you've been listening to them for quite a while, whether or not you were listening to them when they first came out.
It reminded me, like, when you talked about the Bob Seger thing with the wedding receptions, like,
right.
He would not have those kind of negativities about songs. I would, because I'm still within that age gap where I'm like, that was so overplayed, or I'm so tired of hearing that song. So
right. And I think we picked Van Halen, and we had, we discussed my dear friend Charlie Green, who commented on Facebook about, having more people on the draft, like the draft idea. We were saying, but I don't know a whole lot of friends who love Van Halen to the level that you and I do. And it'd be hard to find somebody that maybe could go, I made a playlist with 58 Van Halen songs, my favorite songs that would be on my list to choose from. They're a huge part of my music listening, and we'll get into it as we go. So I decided I would let Matt go first, even though it's my podcast. So we'll do it serpentine, which those of you who don't know drafts, that means he's going to pick one, I'm going to pick 2, 3, and we'll just go back and forth. So we'll both get a chance to pick 2 times in a row. He gets to take the number 1 pick. So we'll assume, unless he has a bad draft, this one's going to be the foundation. Now, we had talked about being NBA fans, that if you don't know, an NBA roster has 12 players on it. With there only being 2 of us, we've kind of decided to adjust it a little bit. We're going to go 15 players. I guess we're going to send some people down to the G League or something. So if we have injuries, we can call them back up if we need to. So with the first pick in the Van Halen draft, you're going to go with what?
I feel like you're just David Stern and you just gave New York Patrick Ewing or something.
Right. You're on the clock.
And I'll mention too, since you're just listening, in my fantasy sports nerd that I am, I went on Google Sheets. I came up with that. We actually have a Van Halen draft list in front of us, and we've got actually a list of every song, and it's going to allow us to plug it in at the end. We've got a tab so we can kind of run those down, and then maybe we can get some comments about who people think drafted the better roster. I think it'd be fun
absolutely.
to see.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, I say this every time, and then I turn the comments off on YouTube because I know from the school I don't like posting sporting events. I don't want to hear what people say on there because I could get it from anywhere. But with our Facebooks, because we'll link it on both of our Facebooks, yeah, it'd be nice to know if you're a Van Halen fan, what did we miss, or what you're like, how in the world did you pick that? So yeah, please do it. And the spreadsheet thing's cool. I forgot to mention that. So
And maybe we can curate a playlist as well.
yeah, we've talked.
people
We
to
were,
link
we were
back,
trying to
and
figure
then-
out a way to link up a playlist. Like we could make playlists and you could go back and listen. And part of the reason why I've even started doing these is music is such a part of my life, and it is yours too. And it takes you back to, so I'm hoping that if you listen to this, you're like, oh, I forgot about that song. If that happens, then the podcast was successful. So
Absolutely. So first pick, this is a big one. I got to set this up, I guess. So when my wife and I got married, she allowed me to, hey, you can pick out what all the groomsmen are going to come out to. You can pick out the song that we get announced to, which was very cool for her to do that. It wasn't a Spotify list like you have now. So there were some parameters, but I thought in my head, I got to have the most bombastic thing for us to walk out with. And I will call this, I play guitar, I use that term loosely nowadays, but I would call this sometimes in my head the mother of guitar riffs, although chronologically it's not.
Right.
But so number one pick, I think this is an easy one. It's going to be Unchained.
Oh, Unchained. I'm going to start with Fair Warning. One of those albums that maybe if you're not as big a Van Halen fan as we are, you might not. I mean, Unchained gets played on the radio. I know YMG plays it. Still, I'll listen to YMG sometimes driving across town if I don't feel like connecting my phone. That's a great choice. That's a great
That album's
song.
dark per se in comparison to some of their other stuff. But like I said, for me, it's just that guitar riff is just huge. And it's got all the things that make Van Halen great. It's got the guitar playing. You've got Dave Shtick, as I like to say.
Right.
Michael Anthony, for people that think that he's just a plug-along bass player, I think you're missing the boat on that. Besides, his vocals are phenomenal.
Right.
So it's got all those elements that make it, I think, just maybe the best in the catalog. So that's why I'm going there for number one.
Yeah, it's funny when you say dark. When you say dark, for them, it is, it's not as pop friendly as maybe clearly 1984 is. But yeah, it is a great album. I really love it. That's a good choice. It's a good start. We also talked ahead of time before I go into my first pick. We both love Dave. Like Sammy a lot too, but we're going to be pretty Dave heavy early.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think Fair Warning, like you said, is classic Dave. I think that the side of Dave that maybe didn't always see, it's good. Anybody that knows me and knows my love of the year 1984 knows I'm going to be pretty heavy right off the bat on 1984 or songs. So my first pick will be, it's got to be Jump. I know that, you think it's in some ways maybe overrated, overplayed. You could say that, I guess. I won't. I'm in the gymnasium a lot for pregame warm-ups for high school sports. It's just such a good song, and it's in many ways it's Eddie Van Halen not just leaning on his guitar. He decides to bring keyboards into it. If you believe what you've read or what you've heard, David Lee Roth didn't like that very much and kind of caused a rift that ended up maybe breaking the band up. He didn't want him. I think it was Eddie that said it. Nobody wants to hear you play keyboards. They want to hear you play the guitar. And that album is full of synthesizer, and it took that band to a different level. Did it become more poppy? Not poppy, but did it become more popular? Radio, like more people accessed it? Yes. But it's still, Jump is a song that I will never, ever, ever skip, ever.
Yeah, it's still
Ever.
a great song, and great solo, keyboard solo. It's got all the elements. my oldest, Everly, she said, Dad, do 2 things. Shout me out on the podcast. I'm going to do that now.
Check.
But she's like, please take Jump. But she's like, take it towards the end of the draft. And I said, well, I don't know, because, I know Tony likes that album a lot. So I can't argue with that, though. It's just, to me, that's probably not knowing that whole catalog earlier as a kid. That's the one I remember. I can remember as, I'm probably in kindergarten then. I can remember singing that song, being how popular it was, and I still love it. I'm not going to change the channel if it comes on.
The video is amazing, and it's nothing other than them performing it. I don't remember if I said this on the podcast I did with Caleb, that was 84 album draft, but I remember somebody having a boom box sitting on the stage in the gymnasium that we both had lunch, or before school. And when I was a middle school kid, somebody's playing on the boom box Jump. I think I jumped higher.
Yeah.
I think my jumper was prettier. Like you were as a kid, this song came on. There was something about it. It's just so good. The album is fantastic, and it's my number 1 pick.
It's a great hook. It's just a great hook. The chorus, it's catchy.
Yeah. And to think that's the last album they did together, it's a pretty good way if you're going to break up to go with that. So then, like I said, round 2, that means I pick. And I'm going to stay with 1984, the album 1984. And I'm going to go with Panama. Panama's my second pick. Another amazing video. We were talking about this earlier when Matt and Ron and I had steak tacos, because we do a lot of steak tacos around here. Dave is the quintessential frontman. This was a video. This is another one where he just kills it. He's such a good singer, and like we said, arrogant, and all the things you want in your frontman. David Lee Roth is that. And he was in this video and on this song. The lyrics, I just love it. This album is one of my favorite albums of all time, and I'm pretty heavy right off the bat on 1984.
I mean, it's quintessential 80s, and again, you've got, there's always the guitar riffs, but it comes to mind when you have songs where you got the little breakdowns where Dave is talking. You've got the, I can't remember which kind of vehicle, but you got Eddie with his hot rod car that is revving. That's what they mic'd to use in this. It's got all the elements of what to me is Van Halen in that era and what makes them great.
Yeah, it's just a great song, and it's another one like some of these other songs that we maybe get to towards the end of the 15. You might not be in the mood for it. I'm always in the mood for Panama. So what's your second round pick?
No, I shouldn't have been surprised. I feel like maybe a bit surprised you went 84 heavy out of the gate. And I do love that album too. I think to a degree I could just draft Van Halen 1 and just go home and be set.
Right.
There's so many good ones on that. And, I've talked to people that were older when that album came out, maybe high school or older, and I'm always asking, what was that like to hear that for the first time?
Yeah. And
just mind-blowing. It just set, not just guitar playing, just kind of took music and turned it on its ear.
Right.
It was such a, land-breaking album. There's a lot of them I like off of that album, but I think for this one, I got to imagine this track had to have been cranked in a lot of high school parking lots with cars with sound systems, and it brought Van Halen to the world with that thumping bass line. I'm going to go with Running with the Devil.
Yeah, that's a great pick. And this morning when I was getting the food ready, when I was throwing stuff together, some salsa verde,
which was excellent, by the way.
Thank you. Running with the Devil came on, and it's like, on my list. I'm like, how's that not number 1? Because it's so good. It's just, and here's the thing. Here's the thing, and I was thinking this earlier, and you'll appreciate this. That's the first song anyone ever heard from Van Halen. Right. Like I was gonna do a blog post about, and there's another one. Here's another podcast we should do. What is the number 1 song on an album, the best one? And I thought it should be called "Punch You in the Face." Like, what's give me the Welcome to the Jungle starts.
Right.
smacks you right across the map. That's what Running with the Devil is. You put this in, you've never heard it before, and it starts, you know,
Yeah,
the train.
that bass line thumps in, and
yeah,
you're like,
it's just-
what is this?
Right. Yeah, it's something else. It is
like I
one
said,
of the
that's-
greatest songs of all time.
That's the introduction to what everybody heard.
First time you ever
you
heard
don't
them.
know who this band is,
Right.
and you're like, wow.
And I wonder, and I'm not going to spend the time trying to Google it because I don't know if I can find it, but I wonder what the first song that would have been released. Like, was that the first release song? I guess if you're listening to this, I can think of somebody who'd make fun of me for not researching it. But like, I don't know what they released first. But like, if you didn't know that song, if you went to Rockin' Robins in Macomb and bought that, and you don't know anything on it, and that's your introduction, that's a pretty good introduction.
Yeah, and again, it's
You
just,
spent money well spent on that vinyl in
it's just,
1979 or
you hear
8,
that out
whatever.
of the gate, and you've got the Dave all the things we like about Dave, the high pitched screams and him and Michael Anthony's vocals. Again, I'm going to talk about that a lot probably through here, but to me that one just hits right out
It's
the
such
gate.
a great song.
So that comes back to me for another pick.
So we go to round 3, and like we said, Serpentine, which means he picks 2 in a row, then I pick 2 in a row.
I have another one. I'm going to go to a different album, and I almost put this one at 2, but I just feel like Running with the Devil is such a landmark because of what we just discussed. I'm going to go back to Fair Warning. I love that album a lot. And another killer guitar riff, and the title of the song, to me, the riff meets up with it. So this is Home, this is Mean Street. Is what I'm going to go for this one. That one just, again, I believe I read he was influenced by slap bass players for that intro, and then the riff's just filthy. When you talk about Mean Street, you feel like that when you hear that intro riff. Classic Alex coming in. It's just another one. Like I said, I really like Fair Warning, and for that one, for me, is just a killer track.
Yeah, I don't remember. Obviously, I was little in this time period. Like, well, I'd have been 10 when Fair Warning came out, and I don't remember. Like, I obviously didn't have it, but it's a little bit of a departure album when you go back and listen now from 1, 2, and when Women and Children First. It's a little bit of a departure from that, and that song is great. Like, that album is great. Like, I think when Caleb and I did 1981, maybe the last 2 or 3 songs on it I'm not a fan of. The rest of them are all my favorite songs, and this one is 100% worthy of being on there. Just a great song on a great album, and the first song on it, another one that would,
Right out of the
you would have
gate.
put that
Fantastic.
cassette in,
Yeah.
or put the
And
vinyl
been
and the
like,
needle
wow.
drops, and you're like, uh-oh, here we go again.
And I think lyrically, it's just, and it goes back to Diver Down and maybe 1984, go back to more of the style of the first 3, but I think just lyrically, it's not the what I maybe equate as like the party type songs.
Right.
Like I said, I don't know if dark's the right word. It's just lyrically, it's different, but just an album that I just really like. I still listen to all the time.
So my turn for 2 in a row. So my 3rd round pick, here we go again. I said it, when he decided that he was going to start using synthesizers in his music, he took it to another level. As being, when we were eating lunch, we were talking about people who don't like Van Halen. No offense, Jerry. But like, we were talking about, he's arguably one of the clearly top 10 guitar players of all time.
Mount Rushmore. There's no question.
Right. It's not even a discussion. So if you say you don't like that kind of music, and that's fine, I'm not judging your opinion, but like, they weren't just a band that had, they weren't in the hair bands. They were something different. And when he decided to go in a different route after after 5 albums, he decides, I want to go this direction. After Diver Down, I think we should go this way. And Dave didn't like it, but they did. I'll Wait, with the synthesizers in I'll Wait. That song, you go back and listen to the albums we just mentioned, you don't see that coming. And that song is on the second side. It's after Hot for Teacher, and it is just lights out. I love that song so much. Just such a great song.
I honestly thought that might be up a little higher because I know I've heard you talk about on the
Yeah.
pods how much
Yeah.
you enjoy that one, and
Yeah.
it's different. And I think, like you said, that's why some people, when you get into the Sammy era, and it was just the times though. I mean, even a band that I love, Rush, they got away from guitar heavy stuff like it was in the 70s, early
Right.
80s. Grace Under Pressure is very synth heavy.
Right.
It was amazing to me though, and I want to say Eddie's 23 when the first album comes out. Even by the time he gets to the Sammy era, he's still 31, but he's still growing as an artist and trying different things. It's just not, sometimes you're like, why don't they just go back to what they used to do?
Yeah.
But for an artist to be able to take something, especially as different as, I'm guessing, as it was to have guitars versus, he's using keyboards and synthesizers, what is he doing?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great track. That's one I think I came to appreciate a lot later, but that's one of those, when you hear it come on the radio and it's a great intro and then that bass thumps in behind it, and that's one of those the dial has to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. That album was all over, Jump's different than that. And Panama is, and some of the others on there. It's just, I don't know. That song will get played on the radio, and rightfully so. I don't even know if they shot a video for it. I bet they didn't. And it is wonderful, and it will never get skipped on mine. You're not going to believe this, and I'm going to get made fun of by some of my friends who will listen to this. As we go into round 4, I'm staying 1984 again. I'm not out. I might have the whole, I should have just said put 1984 in there. Drop Dead Legs.
Okay.
It's funny. You've got those 3 that I've already picked. You got Jump, Panama, I'll Wait. Everybody knows those. If you listen, and they know Hot for Teacher also, but I'm not a Hot for Teacher fan. Drop Dead Legs and one other song on that. I remember, again, sentimentality, being a middle school kid, and I never listened to an entire album. I'm not joking. When I say that on all these pods, if you're listening to these, I'm not joking. Fast forward, rewind. Rewind. I listened to all of it, and Drop Dead Legs is it's a great start. It's a great finish. It's Van Halen. I love that song, and I will not apologize for starting out straight 1984.
That's probably for me, and like I said, I feel like we consume music pretty similarly, the way
Right.
we listen, and that's probably me too, especially then you get into CD era. I'm probably still do it now. I hear a song I really like. I was listening to on the way down here today, and I probably listened to it 5 times in a row. I'm just like, man, that's a really good song, and I'll just go back maybe to the point I wear it out. But this one, man, it's tough. I think maybe if it's off of that album, I think I'll Wait and Drop Dead Legs. To me, you're like 1A, 1B. I'm with you though. Hot for Teacher for me is not, and then maybe it's the overplayed part of it.
Overplayed, right?
But Panama is great too. But those 2 are kind of standouts for me that aren't the mainstream that everybody knows. But yeah, great groove. I can't fault you for either one of those picks because they're great. They just are.
If it was on the radio, I don't know. Maybe maybe that is. I guess I can. While you're doing your next one, I can look and see. But again, I won't get into it. But if there's people that believe that 1984, the year, is so beloved because of Jump or whatever, or just the Purple Rain stuff, there's other things. Those albums had other great things on them, and that's why I love the album 1984 from Van Halen, because I think there's a lot of depth there. And clearly I think that because I'm 4 picks in and I've taken 4 tracks off there.
Well, if you were looking at my list right now, I've got all the albums, and it doesn't mean there's ones I don't like, but I knew this was going to be tough.
Right.
So I'm really was getting a little nitpicky with the ones I really, really like, even kind of color coding, like these are here, these are maybe a bit below, but that one's got, maybe behind for me, Van Halen 1, that one's got more on the list than probably the other albums do as a whole.
Right, yeah.
Because there's just that many good songs on it that aren't what you've heard on the radio. And I've got 3 more on my list. I don't know if they'll get there for me, but they might be on the rest of your draft, but there's at least 3 more really great ones.
Yeah.
So that album was huge, rightfully so.
Yeah. I unapologetic for my love of that album. So, the end of round 4, with only being 2 of us, you got the second pick in the 4th round and the first pick in the 5th round. So you're on. You don't have your starting 5 yet. So who's your power forward?
Okay. Wow. Like I said, you're throwing me a little bit. I didn't expect to have that many, but I can't fault you for it. But it's opening up to where it's making me really kind of like, picking between these is, still a lot of the Dave catalog to go through. I kind of green color-coded ones that are my favorites. And I still got a lot of green on here, obviously. I think I'm going to go back to Van Halen 1 and another killer riff. And another thing, I think the kind of common thread that I see in a lot of these, Van Halen had that, it's something that a lot of bands probably emulated later, this kind of swing boogie type of feel, but in a rock
Right.
type, fast moving. I'm going to go back to VH1 and I'm going to pick I'm the One.
Okay.
It's another one I really enjoy. Great riff, and it's just, like I said, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it's got all those classic Dave elements with everything that's blended together.
And I think it's still, and we mentioned it, but that album, again, when you're talking debut album, if you're a band that ends up making it and lasts, that album, when you listen to it, it's full of a bunch of variety of things that set the stage for the next 6 albums that they put out. And yeah, I'm with you. That's on my list of with songs to choose from. In my 58, that's one of them. Off that first album, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 songs on it, and that's one of those 7. So I can't fault you for that one. That's a good one.
I think I've got 7 or 8 for me off of that one, which is probably tops out of all of them. But again, like I said, getting really nitpicky. Whereas some of those that I like, but I'm not going to draft them because they're not going to beat. I really was looking at. Thought maybe we'd go to 15, so 30 songs is
Right.
really, you're really trying to narrow things down. I'm going to go to
beginning of round 5.
Yeah.
Round 5, first pick for you.
I'm going to go to an album we haven't touched on yet. I'm going to go to Van Halen 2. And this is another, you're going to see for me, these are going to be kind of guitar-centric, but this one kind of reminds me of Mean Street, but it's another short song, but a really good one that I've always liked. Somebody Get Me a Doctor.
Wonderful song. Just love that song so much. That's such a great song. Such a great song. The way it starts. Yeah, I'm with you. That's one of my favorites. One of my favorite Van Halen songs ever. Van Halen 2 is different than Van Halen 1, obviously, partly because you start off with You're No Good. It's a cover.
Right.
Which I think Eddie hated those. I thought I've heard him say or read that he wasn't a big fan of doing all the covers. Then Dancing the Night Away didn't really fit, but then all of a sudden you get smacked in the face. I think Somebody Get Me a Doctor. I think that's the 3rd track on that. I think. Am I right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that song is terrific. That's a good pick.
Yeah. So there's
That person's gonna carry some weight on your team. That's a good 5th starter.
Yep, for sure. So, yeah, like I said, there's a string, and we'll talk about that a little later if we do some. Did I hit some? Oh, here's why I did. I just clicked on. I was like, that was a really odd sound. If you heard that, I clicked on Van Halen 2 on my phone as I was trying to scroll. I was like, I thought something was going on with the fan.
Right.
But anyway, after you said, you got past those first 2, and then there's just a bunch of ringers on that album.
There's a lot of really good
It gets
songs
really
on
strong
it.
for the rest of that album.
And I wonder, again, if we only had supercomputers in front of us where we could look it up, I would assume it was less popular album-wise. Of course, you were little, and I was 10, 11 when it came out, or in that. Well, not even that. But I don't know how those things charted. But that album is loaded with some really, really good songs. Well, I'm going to do it again. Which may or may not be why we needed to have a couple other people in on this. But when I looked at this, when I put those 58 songs into my playlist, I started listening to them, and then I would move them around. I'm dragging and drop. I'm dragging them up and down and whatever. And I would drag them based on what do I think is the best? What are the ones I would want to listen to the most? And this might be the one of my top 5 that off 1984 that might be surprising, but I'll say it this way. When I ripped the songs off of a CD back in the day when you did that, when you took your CD and you made them MP3s, when life changed in that way, I didn't take this song. And then I was looking on iTunes at one point at the album, and I came across this song, and I'm like, how in the world did you not rip this off of the CD before you sold it to whoever to get more money to buy more CDs? And I couldn't not buy Top Jimmy from Van Halen on iTunes. So that's why it's number 5 for me on my list, because it made me, I paid money for it after I had already gotten rid of it, because I was a dummy and did pull it, like, for whatever reason, didn't think I wanted that MP3, and I ended up getting it, purchasing it later, and then listened to it over and over and over again because of how good that song is. And again, I don't know if that's a radio song. I don't know if it was a release, but it is such a good song. It's different. It doesn't lean heavily on the synthesizers like the other ones we've mentioned off 1984 did have. So that's it. So I've almost got the entire album now.
Maybe Rock 106, some channel like that might have played
sure
some of that. I'm
throw
sure
it on every once in a while, maybe.
I can't argue with that. I mean, Top Jimmy, he's the king, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
you can't go wrong with any of those, and that one's on my list for 1984 as well. It's right in there. Like I said, those you kind of find those ones that aren't the ones that everybody know, and those for me, right in there with All Weight, Drop Dead Glades. That's just another great track.
Just listen to it over and over and over again. Like I'm like, I'll spend 99 cents on that, and a lot of money. But at that time, I wasn't buying songs. And yeah, no, it wasn't released. There was only 4 songs released off that. So of those 4 songs, I've picked 3 of them. The last 2 of them were not even releases. And just, I love it. I love that song. It's a good one.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. Since you can't see in here if you're listening, Tony's got a fantastic David Lee Roth shirt on. He would have got a bottle of Jack.
Some Jack
Got
Daniels.
some Jack.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for him to say, "Oh, Jimmy," at the after that.
But here's what's funny is I just went through 5 songs from 1984, and now I'm going to break over into the second phase of Van Halen.
Okay.
The first pick of the 6th round by me will be "Why Can't This Be Love" from 5150. I remember when this album came out. I remember, and I said it already, but like I have, because of my age, I have so many ties to the music we're talking about. I remember sitting in study hall with a magazine that had an article about them breaking up when I was whatever age that was, freshman high school. I remember when they ended up deciding to have Sammy Hagar become their lead singer. 5150 came out on my birthday in 1986. And I remember hearing this song on the radio, whether it was YMG or WWCT or whichever. I remember this song coming on the radio in the tractor when I was working ground for my dad. I know right where I was at. I can see it. And being like, man, this is good. It's not different, but it is a little different. And I love it. And to this day, whenever I hear that song, sounds silly, but that's why I love music. And we've talked about, you and I are very similar in our love of sports and our love of music. And if we had to pick, if someone said, you got to give up one, for me personally, I'm giving up sports because of this exact story. Listening to that song for because they come on the radio and like, here's the new song from Van Halen. You know, you didn't wake up on Friday morning and check Spotify to see what the new releases were.
Right.
You heard it on the radio like that, or on MTV when I had it. I didn't have it, you know, I had it later in life when I was in college. But like, here's the new Van Halen song, and you had been waiting and waiting to see what it was. And I love that song. And it's weird because is it that much better than some of the other songs we both have beneath it that Dave's involved in? I don't know. But this one I'll always remember, and I love it, and I'll listen every time I listen to it. I'm glad that I heard it, and it was the first song of that new version of Van Halen.
That's as a whole, that's why we love music so much. It takes us back to that stuff, and that's one of them. I've got just a column. I've got them split up by album, but I've got a Van Hagar column. But that one's up there for me. That's a song I do like. Some of the other synth stuff I don't. I think we talked about it earlier. It's just I think it's the Van Halen or Eddie himself just going a different direction. But you had different types of maybe Dave's the quote unquote partier, those type of lyrics, and you got to remember Sammy's older than these guys at this point. And he's had an established career. His songs are more about love and things. It's kind of a maturation of the artists. So just a little bit different that way. But that's a track that I enjoy. That's one that there's some of them aren't great for me. And I don't know that I would ever change the channel or whatever. It's just they don't get as much play. Just like you, if you're going on your Spotify list, some of these aren't going to get as much play as the Dave stuff. But we've talked about too before. About just consumption, like you said, it was waiting on the radio, or if you went and bought an album, it was because the cover looked cool, or you had, it's Van Halen, but it's with Sammy Hagar, and I'm sure at that time you were like, oh, Sammy was a huge solo artist in that time period, so that was a big deal to have Dave leave and have that come into the picture, and so. You either, like I said, you heard it on the radio, or you had, for me, I told you before, I consumed records. We both grew up in small towns in the middle of nowhere. I went through my parents' records. That's how I learned stuff. Or I told you, maybe we didn't have cable. I sat all day and watched Time Life, Sounds of the 70s, and just half memorized the commercials.
Right, yeah.
So it's different. Like I said, there's some advantages to kids today, like Caleb, that can pop in and say, I don't know what this is, but you can share it with him. Yep. He doesn't have to go spend the money. Like if you went and bought a cassette, you're vested in it because you paid money for it.
Right.
And you're like, oh, this wasn't as great as I was hoping, but I just spent $15 on it.
Yeah, that's what's funny, with he and I, texting each other or on Instagram, like he's constantly sending me stuff. Yeah, it's completely different. Yeah, the things that he's able to access easily, that you can access easily, it wasn't like that back when I was a kid, or even when you were a kid. So, yeah, first Sammy song, off the charts.
Okay. So I'm just going to update everybody. So that was your sixth man, but so I'm going to give a quick update off of our list here. So our starting five for me, we have, and these were not, these didn't put it in the order that I picked them, but maybe it goes bottom top. Unchained, Mean Street, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, I'm the One, Running with the Devil. That was not the order I took them in, but that's the list. And then you went all 1984, Jump, Panama, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs, All Wait. And then your sixth man, you come in with some Sammy. So,
yeah, it's just funny. I look at my list to choose from now, and it's like, okay, now we're getting down to the part where we'll see. And again, I hope people comment if they're Van Halen fans like us, what we're missing or what was right, what was wrong. So, the second pick of the sixth round is you. So you're picking your first person off the bench.
Sixth man, yeah, first off the bench, man. And like I said, there's still a lot of really good stuff here. And like I said, I don't know that maybe like you, I don't know if I've got just like a set order. Sometimes for me, it's mood I'm in, or like you said, you've got different ties to these things, and you maybe haven't heard it in a while. Then you hear it, and you're like, oh, that kind of throws a memory up. And there's still a lot of stuff open. I'm gonna actually go. I could go to Van Halen 1. I'm gonna go back to. I'll go back to Van Halen 2. I'm going to go DOA, Dead or Alive. Again, another great riff. And just, like I said, that's the part of that album that starts getting really good after Somebody Get Me a Doctor. And then there's just a row of just really killer songs on that album.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The songs at the end of it are really good. That one, Women in Love, right? And that at the end of that, Beautiful Girls
Yeah.
at the end of that. Like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it really does. Like every one of those, I love the songs from then on down. And the funny thing about DOA, I always think, is if you know your SNL and you know Chris Farley and you know they did a skit where it has two of the songs on this album are on it,
Yeah.
like in the skit at the beginning, and DOA at the beginning of it. If you know the song
Yep.
and you know the skit, yeah, it's funny they use that. This is some
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah.
That's a great Van Halen song.
All right, so I got another one here, correct?
Round 7.
Okay, so, man, like I said, like splitting hairs here, but for today, for the mood I'm in, I'm going to go to an album we haven't touched on yet, Women and Children First, and I'm going to go with Take Your Whiskey Home.
Very good song.
Love the acoustic intro. I feel like he's not scatting, but it just kind of the feel Dave has on it.
Right.
You know, I think you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble, and then they just kick in, and it hits.
Yeah, that album is one of the ones that when I was a kid, I just really didn't like it that much. You bought it for And the Cradle Would Rock, Will Rock, but I just didn't really like it that much. And the older I've gotten, the more I appreciate how good it really is. And that's one of the ones I just love off of it. Yep, that's a good choice. I definitely agree with that. Definitely agree with that.
All right, I think that takes us back to
me
last
for
pick
number
at round 7.
So now do I stay with my theme of sticking with certain albums, or do I jump around? I think I'm going to stay with the sentimentality of it, and I'm going to stay with the same album I was on last time. I'm going to say Summer Nights from 5150. I remember the best man in my wedding when he was a young man in high school, Jason Richmond. He learned to play this, and when he had a band that he played music with, I remember listening to them play this at his mom and dad's house. And every time I hear it, it takes me back to when those guys were kids and playing that music. And it's just a good Van Halen song. Typical stuff you would sing about when you're Van Halen. And it just, again, takes me back to a time period of my life when it was like, this is really good. And this is a good soundtrack for this summer, or whatever that summer was. So that's it. I'm staying. I haven't left. I've been on 2 albums. They've got great albums, and I'm sticking with 2. I've been on 2 of them the whole way.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. That's to me, that's classic Sammy. And I think maybe some kids or people that maybe weren't familiar with this stuff before, since Sammy's back out with Joe Satriani, they're reviving some of this stuff.
Right.
Stuff I've seen them play. If you look up on YouTube, it's been pretty heavy. 5150, this type of stuff. So some of this stuff's been popping back up, I think. And yeah, it's just classic, fun Sammy music.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was the right choice. Like, to follow up Dave, they made good music. They made the good choice. I remember they talked about a list of people they were considering, and he was more than enough the right choice. Even though they went in a little bit different direction than our love of Dave, they still it was a good choice. So me again. I'm finally going to break out. I just said that Women and Children First wasn't my favorite album. And then got older, started listening to some different stuff, or listening more intently, using Spotify to actually jump around and listen to whole albums and not do what I did as a kid. And the song I listen to the most, probably currently from them, is a song called Romeo Delight off of that. And that's a song that, unless you're a Van Halen or fan, you might not have ever heard it. So if you are listening to this, if you've hung with us this long, Romeo Delight is on Women and Children First. Wasn't a hit. That album, honestly, Romeo Delight, fourth song on it, couple of a little bit kind of different songs ahead of it. It's just a great rocking Van Halen, David Lee Roth song. Just love it. Love it, love it. Really good.
Yeah, it's on my list. It fast.
Yeah.
Really up tempo even for them. Yeah, I can't argue with that one at all. That was on my list for sure.
Just, it's funny, I go from many songs that were hits to then just out of the blue, but it really was. It's a good song off an album that had one song released. Probably didn't get the, like according to the internet, Rolling Stone gave the album 2.5 stars. Like, it wasn't reviewed very well. Although it does say one of the Rolling Stones reviewers, the famous one, one of the famous ones, he mentioned that song first. So
yeah,
guess I should have wrote for Rolling Stone, huh? Okay, so back to you.
Okay,
number 8.
Round 8. I think for these two, and I've got some. I'm maybe going to getting to that point as you just did, where it's like some that aren't the mainstream stuff, but stuff that I really like. But I'm going to go back to Van Halen 1 again for both of these. And I think part of this too, especially this first one I'm going to say, I just can kind of remember a buddy of mine I was with and hearing this song for the first time. This one also starts out with an acoustic guitar, which is actually Dave playing this time. And then when it just kicks in, and again, I remember hearing this solo and just being like, what was that? I was absolutely floored. I don't remember what age I was at, but it's like I said, some of this stuff I didn't get into till later. But Ice Cream Man, I think, is just a Van Halen staple.
Right, yep. Ice Cream Man, it's one of those songs where you're like, really? From these guys? And then you just love it. That's what that album is so all over the place. It's not even funny. That debut album. Yeah. Eruption, that you really got, whether you even like, it's all over. It has so many different.
I'm not sure that one. That one probably has some radio play, not as much as Eruption Until You Really Got Me, but that one just again, to me that's kind of a great example of Dave's shtick, as I like to call it. Just
yeah, because he picked that,
right?
That's
lyrically, that's just that's got to be, that's classic Dave right there.
He's the one that wanted that on that album, 100%.
So, like I said, that one, starts out cool with him playing, and then just, it just rips. The rest of that track just rips, and like I said, I just remember that's one of those, you have songs like that here the first time, and you're just like,
what?
I just kind of like, first time I ever heard Battery by Metallica, and I was just like, I don't think I've ever heard anything that fast before. And it was just like, what did I just hear? It's just one of those type of things.
Yeah, it's a great song. It's a good pick.
So like I said, I'm going to stick with Van Halen 1. This one, I don't know if this is a favorite for a lot of people. This is just one of those. This is not a fast song. A guitar, I think it's a cool guitar riff, but it's not what you think of with other Eddie stuff. But it's one that I've just always liked. I just always liked the groove of it, and it's Little Dreamer. I just think that's a great song.
It is a great song.
Like I said, it's not fast. It's just, I don't know. It just is what it is. One I've always liked.
Yeah, it's a great one. Again, that album. If you were going to do a draft on drafting debut albums, that's one of the reasons why this album, at least from the things that we both listened to, would have to be on it. It's just loaded. I was just looking at it on the internet. 5 released songs that were released. A couple of them looks like they were in Japan, not in the States, which one of them doesn't really make sense to me. But yeah, it's just a great album, and this is another big part of it. This is a really, really good song. Let's see. Where are we at? I am at pick number 9 for me. So now we are going to kind of go. I've been doing the other thing. Now we are going to kind of go off a little bit. Number 9 for me is a song called Hear About It Later off of Fair Warning. We've talked about Fair Warning a lot already, but it's just another one of those songs on it. It's got so many of them that are just really great songs that I listen to it over and over again since I was a little kid. Just really good. Another album that in a time or as a person who didn't listen to albums all the way through very often, this was one of the ones I did. When I had it on cassette, you listened all the way through it. Really good. Like I said earlier, there's a couple of them at the end that I don't like. But 1 through 7 was great, and this would be one of them.
And that one's one that kind of builds. It's a slow intro, chorusy intro, and then it, kicks in. And again, this is another one I think of, like I said a few times already, the Michael Anthony's background vocals to me are always way overlooked for this band. People don't give him the credit. Yeah. And even I think now the smartest thing that Sammy did is taking Michael with him, because he's older. They have to tune down now. He can't hit the high. He still sings great, but it's age, just like with anybody. But he's got Michael to hit all those. Michael can still hit all that high stuff. Yeah. And this is one of those tracks where it's like, man, you really, if you listen close to that portion of it, you really realize how great those high vocals blended in with Dave, and man, it just worked.
Yeah, it's a good album filled with songs that, again, like I said, weren't released in the U.S. and if you weren't a fan, you didn't know them. So if you're listening, hopefully you're taking notes, and that's one I would definitely listen to. Back to nope, it's you. No, it's not. Is it? Yeah, it's me. First pick of 10.
Yep, I think I put it in the wrong spot there. Yeah, so you got first pick of 10. Yeah.
So number 10, my pick for number 10. Let's go with. I'll take my first one off of Van Halen 1. Ain't Talking About Love. That's one of those that I'm surprised it's still on the board. Not just because I didn't pick it, but that's a good one. That's one that popular, but just a great song too. In an album that was full of things that were all over the place, that fits perfectly in an album full of things that were all over the place. And to think that, you look online, it wasn't released it says it was released in Japan, so I assume that means it wasn't in the States. That's a great song. That's a song that's on the radio all the time. Yeah. It was on the radio all the time when we were kids. You could tune into the radio right now and have a chance of hearing it on YMG or whatever. So that album's loaded. We talked earlier. I mean, I looked through my list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's say 8 albums through 1988, and every one of them's got at least 6 or 7 songs on it, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it's up there high on my list. Just that some of these other ones, and I don't think it's because it's been overplayed. I just kind of like these other ones that I picked, particularly off this album, a little bit more. But that one's, again, if you're building, if you got into this is Eddie Van Halen. And, he was so unique that it's like if you listen to Beat It and his playing it all, you absolutely know he's playing that solo. There's some guys, stylistically, that's him. Yeah. This has got to be one of those riffs that is absolutely, you hear that and it's unmistakable who it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a great, it's a great album full of so many diverse songs, and to think it's the debut. So number 10 for you.
Okay, so you grabbed something off of Fair Warning here a couple picks ago. This is probably not a one that maybe a lot of people don't know this one. This is just another one that's kind of a banger right out of the gate, and I've always enjoyed it. It's up tempo, which are a lot of the ones that are my favorites have that, up tempo feel. Center Swing.
Yeah, it's a really good song too.
It's just one that I've just always liked it. Yeah.
I just knew we weren't gonna when we did this. I knew there wouldn't be a whole lot of argument.
Yeah,
Because I knew we wouldn't do a whole lot of arguing, or you'd be like, "What? I can't believe you picked that." But yeah, that one's one of the ones too that's on my list that 100% could have or would have been picked by me. So here we are at round 11. So we've got 4 more picks left. 5 more picks left.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, my list of Dave stuff's dwindling a little bit. I'm going to actually go, I'm going to head over to Sammy for this one. But this is one you won't find on a studio album. You'll find it on the Greatest Hits Volume 1. It was also on a soundtrack. I'm going to go with Humans Being. It's another one. I love that intro riff. That song has a great build up in the middle, and I just feel like it ties in well for that theme of that particular movie. Is Twister. I was trying to spit out there.
Yeah.
I just feel like that build up in the middle of that just makes you feel like maybe you're in the middle of that. So that's why I've always liked that song.
Yeah, I can remember it being on that soundtrack too. Yeah, and it was released. Yeah, I don't know if it would have been on my list, but it's a good song. It's definitely later Van Halen, even later Sammy Van Halen. So that brings me to my 2 picks. Let's go with, I think this is going to help round out my team. In May of 1988, OU812 came out. I know that, or 88, sorry. In 88 it came, May of 88 it came out. And if I misspoke. And the song Black and Blue was one of the ones on that one that I just absolutely loved. And I think it was the first one they released. And it was kind of when Eddie was doing a few different guitar things, like towards the end of it. At one point, like at the end or towards the end, he does something when makes the guitar sound different, because he loved to play around with that and make different sounds with things he was doing with it. And he went on even into For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and did some different things, making how he made the guitar sound. But Black and Blue was always one that I really liked. So that would be my pick for number 11, number 10, 11. It's my number 11th pick is Black and Blue.
This isn't an argument, but we had talked the other day. This is the one album. I don't think I have anything off of this list. It just, I don't know. This album just doesn't resonate with me. I don't know why. Apolitical Blues is cool, and it doesn't mean that I wouldn't ever listen to it. It's just, I guess in this context, that one just kind of falls short for me.
Yeah.
I feel like a couple of the albums afterwards were a little bit better, or at least halves of them. I always felt like, I think if you took maybe the half of, for me personally, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and Balance, and put the halves of those I like, it would have been a absolutely killer album. This one, I don't know. I never got into this one as much, but I can absolutely understand. Hey, I remember where I was at when this was going on, and why you would go that direction.
Yeah, I just remember when it came. I remember it came out. It would have been, like I said, May of '88. So this, like the end of the school year, my junior year, and I liked it a lot. Not as much as 5150, but I liked it. The funny thing is I liked it infinitely more than I liked For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Like I have one song off that one that I would even consider, and it's an instrumental. It's not even a song. And I went back, probably Caleb, and I went back and was listening to, or maybe it wasn't him. I went back and listened to For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, and I can't get through it. I can't listen through it. So, I said we hadn't had much of a disagreement.
Yeah.
We didn't disagree, but we disagree on OU812 in so much as I don't love it, but it definitely, I don't know if I like it better than the ones that I thought that was the end for me personally.
Yeah.
Of them. So then if I go on to my next pick, let's see, I'm looking at my list of songs, and we've got I'm way down here. Now I'm down to number 15 on my list of my playlist list. Beautiful Girls off Van Halen 2. Again, I mentioned the Chris Farley skit, poolside, Adam Sandler in it. And this the DOA from Your Choice earlier in round 6 was the beginning, and then it went into Beautiful Girls, hilarious skit. If you haven't seen it, Google it. If you have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Really funny, great song, regardless of whether the video. I thought it was a great song before. Just made that skit even funnier. Again, the last song on the second album from Van Halen, and an album full of songs besides maybe the first couple that were really, really good.
To me, that's a fun song. That's another
That's
classic Dave.
Right, yeah.
You feel like that's something,
Yeah.
if he didn't write it, man, that's right up his alley. And then as they're running down the end of that song and the chorus is going, just the stuff he's saying in there, that to me, that's just quintessential
Yeah.
Dave. You know, I love him, I need him. That kind of
Right,
stuff is just, that's Dave in a nutshell, man.
Yeah, he was something else when it came to stuff like that.
Yeah.
He really was, which I wonder if that drove them nuts or not, but he made them what they were because of stuff like that early. Obviously, Eddie's guitar trumps everything, but. So your 12th and 13th round picks, here we go. We're getting to the end.
Yeah. I think I still have a couple things from the Dave catalog. Again, like, not that I don't like Sammy, it's just there's so much stuff that I prefer just a little bit more. I'm going to go stick with Van Halen 2 where you're at, and I'm going to go to it's another one of these kind of swing boogie style songs, Bottoms Up.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is another just feels like that's right in Dave's wheelhouse, but it's just got that driving bass line, and you know, it's a party song.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just, that's another really good one too. And it's no radio play. If you're a fan listening to this, you know exactly what we're talking about. It's just another really good song. A really, really good song that you probably never heard on the radio, those of us that grew up listening to the radio. Your next one.
Okay, we're in round 13. Okay. I don't think either one of us, I mean, there's a few I could look at. I don't think either one of us have taken everything off Diver Down to this point, right?
No.
And again, that's, I think, just having to do with the covers. That one probably has the least amount on an album that I really, really like. That's probably not one of my favorite albums. I said I don't love the covers, but there's 2 or 3 that I enjoy off of that one. I'm going to go, again, because I just think that this one has a chorus that I think sticks out in my mind as being just quintessential Van Halen. I'm going to go with Wherever All the Good Times Gone.
Yeah, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 off of it, but one of them is a cover. The others that weren't covers are good, and that's definitely one of them. It's good. I think you can tell that they're starting to not mesh the same way. I think, looking back on it when you listen to it. But yeah, that song's a great song. I really like that one.
Maybe, I don't know, without thinking about the lyrics through a little bit more specifically, but maybe that's pointed to that, a sign of, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe they're pointing to that, like, wow, where'd the last 4 or 5 years go?
Yeah, because everything that you hear or you read or you heard or read from that time period was, things weren't good with them, and that album kind of was the end of it in terms of, yes, they put out 1984 after that, but cracks were starting to form from what you've read, or at least what I read and heard, remember from as a kid. So I got 3 picks left, so I need to nail these next 2, and then I can, maybe
you need some shooters off the bench. You need a wing defender and some shooters off the bench, right? To round it out.
Let's go. Trying trying to see what's left on my list up through, like I said, through 15. Everything's gone. I'm gonna take my second one off Van Halen 1, or Van Halen's debut album. Feel Your Love Tonight is where I'll go with this pick. So another just a neat fit in an album that's all over the place. You've got your famous first released song that was a famous cover first release song. I did go look. You Really Got Me. So you got that, and then it's just all over the place. Like we said, Running with the Devil's been picked. Ice Cream Man, Ain't Talking About Love. Like, it's all over. Like, we've almost, together we've taken almost all of that first album. So yeah, it's a good one. It's a good song that fits into what you think of early Van Halen being.
Just another one with, like I said, the vocals. It's just got another good hook. They just had so many good hooks with their choruses.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a great song.
Let's see. Should I jump out, or because now we've picked every album I have in my top 17 has been taken. So if I get to 18, do I take that one, or is there something beneath it? Gosh, I've taken a bunch of people from the same college, from the 1984 college. I guess we'll stick with it. Girl Gone Bad, off of 1984, is another one of those songs that never played on the radio, but listen to it every time, never skip it. I think maybe the only song I'd skip on Van Halen on 1984 would be Hot for Teacher. It's the only one I would skip. So Girl Gone Bad, kind of a slow, grungy sounding beginning, bass, and it's just kind of trudges along. I like that one. That was in my top 20. It was 18. So
All right, so my last two picks. So end of round 14 and 15, and then we're just about to the end here. Man, still some good Dave stuff, but I feel like I gotta get over to Sammy a little bit. I think I'm like you. I think 5150's the best out of that era. There's other stuff I made some notes on here. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of those others that we didn't pick or just didn't quite make this list. But I think just like the first album, Running with the Devil comes in. When you come into 5150, you get that "Hello, baby," right, and that's kind of the announcement of Sammy coming in. So I'm going to go with "Good Enough."
Yeah. It's funny. Clearly, that's what they were thinking when they did that. Had to be. And I remember, when you bought that CD or cassette, bought the cassette for me, right off the bat, it lets you know, here we go, it's something different. But, they believed you're going to like it. And I remember you did. It was something different, and it was good.
Just another one was just kicked it into gear right out of the bat. It was just kind of like you said, maybe kind of an announcement. Like, we haven't lost a step. We got a different guy in here, but we can still rock like we have been.
Well, and you didn't put Why Can't This Be Love first. You got that first, and then the second song was the main hit. So yeah, that's a good choice. It was definitely on my list too.
All right, going to my last one. I'm going to go a totally different direction, and I don't know how many people really listened to Another Kind of Truth, which was the last album that they put out with Wolfie on there. I think there's I actually have a lot of songs that I like off of this album. Admittedly, Dave's vocals are rough, and that's just, I think when I first listened to it, I was so excited that they were doing an album with Dave. I didn't really notice the vocals, and then other people I talked to were kind of like, the vocals aren't great.
Right.
And then when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, you're right. But for me, it was just a return to that lineup, and Eddie's playing was just so good on that album. Yeah. One thing that kind of made me sad was you get such a gap from after Sammy left. Well, yeah, let's see what Balance in '95, and then you had Van Halen 3 in '98, and then you had this gap from '98 to 2012 where we just don't get anything.
Right.
Dave trying to remember. He showed up at MTV Awards, right, 96,
Yeah.
and then that quickly, just as soon as it came, it was gone.
Right.
But this came out 2012, so that's always the thing that kind of disappointed me. Was like, there was so much material. It had to have been, and it was always just, I don't know if they always wanted to get Dave back in. They couldn't find the right singer. Obviously, Eddie had some issues, health issues, and sobriety issues in there. But that album, if you haven't heard it, I think it's back on Spotify now. For a while, I think I read Wolfie was okay having on there. I don't think Dave wanted on there, which is classic Dave. Like, he's the one blockading that one being on there. And so it's back on there now. I think the last 4 or 5 tracks I really enjoy. And I believe this is, without looking, I think this is the last track on that album. And it is a track called Beats Workin'. It's, again, Dave. It's got Wolfie this time instead of Michael Anthony, which is different. But it's got a really cool breakdown at the end where it's got a little bass solo, and then Eddie just rips going out. And to me, it's, that's the last recorded track you get as far as a studio album from Eddie, and a little guitar stuff at the end of it. So if that's one you haven't heard, check that one out. That's one I wanted to grab one off of that album, so I'm going to end with that one.
Yeah, I remember listening to it when it first came out. I listened to part of it the other day. It just, it's. I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it other than you were looking forward to it, and I don't know what you were expecting. But I'm glad that they did it. But I none of it really jumped out at me to be like whether I'd go back and 100% listen to it again. Not that it's bad. It's just different. It's different going back because like everybody's at the end other than Eddie's son.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's a different album, and you don't know. I think they were always so about their chemistry and where they were together and what they were doing, and which is weird because Diver Down, again, like I said, seemed like it was showing cracks, and then they put out 1984, but because didn't they put wasn't there a song on the One Greatest Hits?
There's 2 on there, actually. There's 2 with Dave on there, which one of those I really like, but wasn't quite, and we can talk about that in a little bit maybe, but there was 2 on that Volume 1 Greatest Hits.
I will go to my Mr. Irrelevant. And I guess hard to believe that Van Halen 2 will be the one to get it, but Women in Love is my last pick. Such a, I wonder if, I bet Van Halen 2 ended up being a bargain bin album. I bet you it did. When I was a kid, you'd go to Kmart, Walmart, wherever, and you'd go pick out cassettes from the bargain bin. And I bet it was one because it wasn't as popular as the first one. I bet you that's where I got it from. And it's got so many really good songs, like we said, Beyond, we've said it 3 or 4 or 5 times. The first 2 covers, everything else was just lights out. And no, it wasn't as bombastic maybe as Van Halen's first album was, but it's a really good album regardless. So that would be my number. That's my number 15. That rounds out my lineup. So
that's like I said, it's kind of crazy. You're thinking I'm pulling something off Van Halen 2 at the end, but there's just, like we talked about, that early catalog, and you lean into Sammy a little harder than I do, and I've got a list of stuff as well, but it's just, there's so much good stuff, and to think that was done from a studio recording, it was a 6-year run. That's pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah. They're just, as we come to the end, it's just they were a great band. Are they Led Zeppelin? No. Are they Pink Floyd? Maybe, depending on what, whatever your fandom is. But gosh, how many of the songs that we've just talked about are like a soundtrack of my youth, a huge part of my youth. And they were something else. They were not a hair band. They were not, pop music. They were what rock and roll music should be from 1978 all the way through the end of the 80s into the 90s.
Yeah.
And like you said, 2012, you get one last run at it.
Yeah.
So what did you have? What's something you didn't get picked by you or me that when I'm scrolling through your spreadsheet,
Okay.
Name a couple, name 3 that you're like, gosh, I can't believe neither one of us picked it.
Kind of sticking with, I think probably both of us like Cradle Will Rock, but that's one that's heard. Light Up the Sky was one I had some green colored ones on ones that I really like. There's still some stuff on VH1. I think if you go into the Van Hagar stuff that I've got on my list, 5150, Get Up's another one of those boogie ones. 5150 is another one I like. Right now, I know that one's overplayed, but I just always liked, the reason I liked that song was I always liked the piano part of it, but where it breaks down and he's talking and then it builds back up.
Right.
And I think that's one of my favorite Eddie solos, and it's not a super over the top technical solo, but it just fits that song. I think I just always liked that one. And then, like I said, out of the Sammy stuff, I think this was off for Colonel. I just can't spit it out. You know what I'm talking about? You can edit that. Man on a Mission's another one I like.
Yeah.
I know that one you said wasn't great for you. There's only about 4. I'm assuming you were talking about 316 earlier.
Yeah, that one's amazing.
Yeah, that one
Yeah.
I really like.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so like I said, Balance has a couple. Like I said, I feel like if you took that album and Balance and took half and half and would have sandwiched that together, you would have had a pretty killer album. I think I also had Hang 'Em High was another one I had on there.
That's a good song.
Yeah.
That's a really good song. I'd say my 3 from just scrolling through your spreadsheet that how did I not take that? Fools off of Women and Children First. It's a good one. So This Is Love off of Fair Warning. Probably no radio airplay or whatever. And how about Cathedral off of Diver Down? Yeah. Instrumental-y deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that kind of thing. So it's been fun. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It was a good podcast. If you listened, I hope you enjoyed it. We like the draft idea. We may do that again. We may try to get some band that we know, somebody else. We get a couple people in here with us and do that again. More of a round table and see what happens. Funny thing is they end up being long. So if you hung with us, what are we looking at? About an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So that's all right.
I don't know if we'd get that far.
You can always pause and come back to it.
Yeah.
So it's good to have you with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was going to say, go online, give us a vote on whose list you like better.
Right, yeah. Who was right, who was wrong? Isn't the Lakers fan always right? No, maybe not. So thanks for sitting in with me. We'll do it again sometime.
All right.
Thanks again for listening. Don't forget, life is good. It always is.